Welcome to the 6th episode of Rain Race. Today we're going to be talking about IndyCar's new coverage deal with NBC Sports. We're going to be talking about Sao Paulo's return to the WEC schedule, and we're going to round it all off with a recap of the Sebring and Melbourne race weekends. I'm Chris Aurelio. This is Rain Race. Let's go. I'm joined here with the usual co-host of this program, Kyle Cuthbertson.
What's up?
Yes, today we're going to be talking about a couple different things. It's been 2 weeks since the last episode came out, so that gave us a little bit more time to come up with some topics. So we're going to start off here today with IndyCar, because IndyCar recently announced a new TV deal with NBC Sports. It's a little bit of a, an interpretation game at the moment. They haven't released a ton of details. What we do know is that the 2019 Indianapolis 500 will be broadcasted on NBC, and 8 IndyCar races will be broadcasted on Network NBC, not NBC Sports, not CNBC, none of those. Network NBC will have 8 races in 2019, and it also means no more ABC. So, Kyle, if you want to start us off here about this whole deal that IndyCar has announced.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge positive to have 8 races on network TV. The only negatives from this deal would have been the NBC Gold, but I guess from what we're hearing now, they don't know how they're going to do the NBC Gold yet because they haven't really released a schedule. So it all depends on how we get the streaming for practice and qualifying, what practice and qualifying ends up on television. It's just a lot of unknowns, but the basic gist is we have 8 network races, and then the rest will be an NBCSN, no CNBC crap. And it is the second best TV deal in motorsports behind NASCAR and Fox. So that's a huge positive.
Yeah, and you mentioned NBC Sports Gold. For those who don't know, NBC Sports Gold is pretty much NBC's standalone video streaming service. So if you don't want to pay for a cable subscription and you don't have access to Live Extra because you don't have a cable subscription, NBC Sports Gold allows you to pay a certain amount of money per year, $30, $35, all the way up to like $60 a year. And you can access live and on-demand streaming of all the events that you want to watch. So, like I said before, it's pretty much an interpretation game, but what Mark Miles said in the press conference is that it's meant to be complementary to television, and any practice or qualifying event that's not broadcasted on TV will be broadcasted on NBC Sports Gold. Whether or not we're going to find those on NBC Sports Live Extra for the races that aren't on TV, or for the practice and qualifying that are on TV, I should say, we're not sure. Mark Miles even said they're not sure yet. They need to finalize all the details first. But so yeah, that's going to be something that we have to wait and see on. Alongside that, Indy Lights as well will be broadcasted, staying on NBC. They were already there. But they said that all of those races will be broadcasted in the same NBC Sports Gold package. So we will cover that more once we get the news in the future. Of course, this also means the end of ABC's run with IndyCar and the Indianapolis 500, an over 50-year run of them broadcasting the Indy 500. So I think it's going to be really somewhat disappointing to see them leave, especially at Indy, because that was pretty much just the coverage that anybody nowadays has grown up with. They actually did a really good job, I'd say, with covering the Indy 500. Maybe not so much in their last few years, but I think it's just pretty much an iconic staple to the race itself that they are broadcasting pretty much half the history of it. So it's going to be a little bit disappointing to see them go, but it's exciting to see what NBC can bring in the future.
Of course, ABC hasn't had the best run the last couple of years, but what they've done for IndyCar through the 80s and 90s, I think I saw today that in 89 they won, what was it, an Emmy, that would have been, for the best sports coverage or something like that. So really, when we had Bobby and Posey and Paul Page in the booth and everything was great, there was a full dedicated team to the race, and everything that they've done through the history, it's going to be sad to see them go, but it's definitely exciting to see NBC. I don't think there's any other provider out there that will put this much effort into IndyCar than NBC, because it's obvious through the last couple races and the Indy 500s that ABC just simply doesn't care as much. So it's going to be interesting to see NBC, and it's going to be sad to see ABC go, of course.
Yeah, and the last few things I want to touch on here is NBC, of course, with ABC losing the rights to IndyCar. I wonder if we're going to see any of ABC's commentators, especially like Alan Bestwick, transition over to NBC. He's been there before. So I think if NBC is able to pick up somebody like Alan Bestwick, it would be a great opportunity. And something I've said about NBC's coverage of IndyCar is that their commentators are pretty much run on the mill. It varies by week. You have people like Lee Diffie some weeks. You'll have people, Townsend Bell, Paul Tracy other weeks, and Kevin Lee a couple other weeks later. And so it's really just been all over the place. Hopefully, this new announcement also gives them a bigger emphasis on what commentators. It's just pretty much a staple group of commentators that they have in each group, in each race, I should say. Rather than the whole scattered commentators like we've seen in the past few years. And then lastly, what I want to touch on is NBC said they're going to do a lot more promotion for IndyCar, which is great because if you've been paying attention lately, IndyCar is already on the rise, and if NBC can promote it even more than they already do, I think we have a pretty positive future on our hands. So anyways, the next thing I want to go over here is in the world of sports cars. WEC this past week has announced a return to Sao Paulo for the 2019-2020 Super Season, not the upcoming one, of course, the one after that. They raced at Sao Paulo from 2012 to 2014, so it's great for them to be coming back. There's no set date confirmed right now, but Kyle, you have a couple things that you'd like to say about this race from what I've heard.
Definitely Sao Paulo coming back Sao Paulo's a race that since it left the schedule, I kind of wanted it to come back. It's a great track. It's going to be an interesting race to see. And I think a positive is that N Duduk, however you pronounce that, it's a events company in Brazil, and they'll be promoting the event. And they also do the promotions for the Petrobras, how you say that sponsors McLaren and Volkswagen. So that's also a positive. Bruno Senna is an ambassador for the race. I think it'll be big. I think it's going to be a big event.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we had a lot of action there in the previous races. So hopefully the return of Brazil can attract some more fans, especially because Brazil has a huge motorsports presence in pretty much every series, IndyCar and sports cars. So I think it's going to draw a pretty big crowd, and it's going to be a great one to see back on the schedule. All right, so moving on to the next thing. If you've listened to the last few episodes, particularly the last episode we had, episode 5, where I particularly pointed out that Kyle here likes to ramble a lot. So I decided with this new episode, we were going to give him a brand new segment each week, or each podcast we do. It's called In Case You Missed It. The way it works is, over the past week or two now, he has been gathering a bunch of news, putting it on a Google Doc, and he's going to have 2 minutes to read off as much of it as he possibly can. So, Kyle, are you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1, go.
IndyCar tested at IMS last Friday with the GP road course, and then the oval testing was postponed because of snow to late April to early May. With Danica will be scheduled for that test. Aaron Telitz tested the number 5 Schmidt-Peters Motorsports car, while Wickens recovers from a supposed muscle injury. I didn't hear much about that, but it's a thing. Mazda Race at Laguna Seca will now be called WeatherTech Raceway after a vote in the Monterey County. Elio is bringing back the yellow submarine livery for the month of May with Shell Pennzoil. AJ Foyt survived a killer bee attack on his farm again. Pastor Maldonado, the F1 meme lord, is racing the full season for Dragon Speed in WC. A pair of Indy 500 confirmations are happening with Pippa Mann with a coin ride with Donate Life. Susan G. Komen isn't the full sponsor now. Jay Howard confirmed his ride with One Cure as a sponsor, same sponsor Ray Hall has for Phoenix. Howard is the 33rd confirmed entry, but Reinbold has an entry, so 34. Davison still has money, and then Lazier can show up, so that would make 36. Juan Montoya is considering doing Le Mans with United Autosport. Rebellion confirmed a lineup with Lauder, Yanni, and Senna in the number 1. Durrani, yes, Pippo. Antonio Giovinazzi, Daniel Serra may see their Ferrari debut with AF Corse, or Corsa, I don't know, at Le Mans because of the 3rd car they're bringing.
Is that all you got?
Oh, that's it.
All right. Yeah, there you go. In case you missed it, it's a new weekly feature. You'll get everything, well, not everything, but almost everything you need to know in the world of racing in 2 minutes or less. Moving on to the final thing I want to go over here, because we've had 2 weeks off the air, there are a couple races to recap. First one is Sebring. 12 Hours of Sebring was last weekend, at the time of recording it last weekend. I'll be honest, I wasn't home for the first half. I was at work, so I couldn't see too much of what was going on, but the number 2 ESM Nismo Tequila Patron car crashed at the very start. Went out of the race pretty much on lap 1 right then and there. The 64 Scuderia Corsa Ferrari had contact with the PR1 Matthias and Ligier and flipped over. So that was quite a spectacular thing to happen at Sebring. Not too common that we see GT3 cars flip over like that, but hey, Sebring's a wild track, I guess. And then the middle half of the race, or the middle portion of the race, not too much to go over in particular. The prototype and GTD classes were really close together. GTLM, not quite as much, but still a good battle going on throughout the entire race. Pretty much what we saw at Daytona as well, I'd say. But towards the end of the race, Mazda was actually having a great run with the 55 car. The 77 car had some issues earlier on, but the 55 in particular at the end was really putting on a stellar performance until the final hour when Mazda decided to pull a Mazda, I guess is the only way to phrase it. When they're leaving the pits, on their final pit stop actually, the car stalled in the pits. I noticed throughout the entire race pretty much they are having some issues getting the car running after being stopped in the pits. I guess it was a clutch issue. But at the end of the day, it was the 22 ESM Nismo taking the victory. Of course, that means that the 22 car won, and the sister number 2 car finished dead last. So sort of a bittersweet day there for Extreme Speed. In GTLM, like I said, not the greatest battle we've seen all day. Pretty much it was obvious in the middle part that it would come down to Porsche or BMW for the win. So, I mean, those two pretty much duked it out until the end, but at the end it was the number 911 Porsche? Yeah, it was the 911 Porsche that took it at the end. And in GTD, we saw, like I said earlier, a battle until the end, and that title went to the Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini. So a great race on hand there overall. And I'd also like to point out one thing. If you looked at episode 5, where we made our predictions for Sebring, I predicted that the 22 car would win against all odds in prototype, and I was correct. And if you go back to episode 1, you'd see that I said the number 31 car would win. No, I'm sorry, the number 5 Action Express would win Daytona overall, and they did. So that means I'm 2 for 2 on IMSA prototype picks. Now, we don't do official picks for every single race. We usually just do the larger ones throughout the year. But for the record, I'm going to say on hand that the Wayne Taylor Racing Cadillac's winning Long Beach. Let's see if we can keep this streak alive on that one. Kyle, do you have any comments you'd like to say about the 12 Hours of Sebring last weekend?
Well, I obviously, picked the Porsche correctly. Because that's actually funny because I only picked them because I did want to pick Corvette for every race, so I thought I'd make that my freebie, and of course I got it right. But definitely it was interesting to see Mazda up there competing for the win. They obviously took a lot of gains out of Daytona and came to Sebring prepared, and also BMW with the new M6. And while I wasn't able to watch the entire race, I heard it was pretty good. So definitely some positives out of IMSA.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the rest of the season. We got a long season ahead of us. Great championship coming up. So go check it out if you haven't yet. You might end up being a fan. But the last thing I want to go over here was this past weekend, we just had the F1 championship roll into its first race of the 2018 season at Melbourne. First race in the brand new F1 era, as they're sort of promoting it with the halos and the new TV graphics. Oh boy. And the new TV partner here in the US. Oh boy, we've got a lot of ups and downs from that weekend, but spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it yet, Sebastian Vettel took the honors of winning that race, pretty much played the virtual safety car to his advantage for Romain Grosjean's incident. Is that a leeway right there? I think that's a leeway to what happened with Haas. Haas actually had both cars running 4th and 5th quite a few laps into the race, and then under the first pit stops. Yeah, they just I believe it was actually, was it a tire issue on both of them, a wheel gun issue on both cars?
Yes,
Yeah.
same tire, same
Um,
crew guy.
of course, there was a joke going around the Twitter banter game, saying that the
Oh.
American teams have an issue with guns, but
And people saying that they brought the NASCAR squad instead of their
oh
usual squad.
no, yeah. So, but yeah, that was really unfortunate to see both Haas cars go out from a what would be their best finish of all time if they were able to stay in fourth and fifth. They had great pace up until the incident that pretty much made both of them retire. So that was a real shame. Um, and yeah, like I said, at the end, it was down to Vettel and Hamilton, and Vettel was pretty much just able to find the pace. He didn't have it in the beginning, but towards the end, he pretty much just got that thing nailed down and was able to pull a gap on Hamilton. So yeah, that was the first race of the 2018 season. Halos, obviously, big controversy going on there. You either, well, I was gonna say either like it or you don't. I don't know too many people who like them, so. And the ESPN coverage in the States, they're taking Sky Sports F1's coverage from Europe, if you haven't known. But a lot of people, of course, critical of how they handled that whole situation. People are saying it was very poorly produced. And from what I see, I agree with it. It was pretty much, I mean, Kyle, you made the analogy when we were talking before that it's similar to how Fox Sports handled the WEC commentary, where you had WEC commentators, and when they cut to commercial and came back from commercial, it just kind of felt random, just kind of thrown in there, and it kind of caught you off guard sometimes. But I guess that's kind of what we're going to be settling in for at this time. But if you're not a fan, the F1 streaming package is coming, so dish out some money and pay for that if you'd like. But what would you say, recapping the Melbourne F1 weekend?
I'd say it was more of a dramatic race than having good racing. I think I read something. There were 5 overtakes after lap 1. If that's correct, then that is just mind blowing. But yeah, grazie ragazzi, Forza Ferrari. Vettel got really lucky with the safety car there with Grosjean. Initially, I thought that Vettel would have jumped him anyways, but actually now I think about it, with the virtual safety car, he wouldn't have. But Ferrari really did play Mercedes like a fiddle, and it looked like Hamilton was going to have a nice duel to the finish. But Hamilton's tires, because he ran the stint so much longer than Vettel, his tires were actually blistering in the recording, and it was getting pretty bad. I did hear about some overheating issues possibly for Mercedes, so that's something interesting. But yeah, I think Hamilton probably would have won the race if he would have followed the right strategy, because Raikkonen pit really early. I think Raikkonen wasn't too happy about that. I heard him saying to his engineer, "Don't screw me on this." And he didn't look very pleased after the race. But I mean, Kimi and emotions, whatever. But anyways, they pitted Kimi really early, and I think it was more using it as bait to make Hamilton respond and pit early too. So a lap after Raikkonen, Hamilton pit, and then I think Vettel did an extra like 5 to 8 laps. Overall, gave him a better position than Hamilton. So great race by Ferrari and Vettel. It was better managed than Mercedes, and of course Mercedes can't just admit that they lost fair and square. They have to say that they there was a software issue that led them to pit too early. I don't know.
No,
but of course they can't just admit defeat.
The software issue is actually dealing with the virtual safety car. For those who don't understand how VSCs work, basically you slow down and you have to stay within a time delta to the car in front or behind you. So Kyle and I would know this from playing the F1 games, but they always tell you the delta that you have to stay behind the car in front of you, or the car behind you if you're leading. And apparently what was going on with the software issue is that Hamilton's delta was displayed incorrectly, and he ended up giving up time to Vettel. So whether or not that really played too much in the end, I don't know. It's a factor, but I don't think it's going to end up playing too much. I think at the end, Vettel just was able to find the pace that Hamilton didn't. So yeah, I mean, that was just a little bit, like I said, or like you said, of a dramatic race there. But excitement-wise, I wouldn't say too much about it. It's Australia. It's never been too exciting for F1. They had to have 3 DRS zones to increase the passing. But anyway,
have you heard about the conspiracies?
No, I have not.
People are saying that Kevin Magnussen and Haas had their issue to bring out the virtual safety car and let Vettel win.
Yeah.
Have you heard that crazy conspiracy? That is a plus David Land conspiracy right there, folks.
Maybe if they were in like 15th, then maybe we'll talk. But no, when they're 4th and 5th on their best, they're going on to their best result ever. But do you have any closing thoughts about the weekend in Melbourne?
I think it's starting on the right track for F1 in one way, in that there is some hope for some decent racing this year. But I mean, if the whole 5 overtakes thing is true, then yikes.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this whole season pans out, but it already looks like it's going to be the same old from last year, Mercedes versus Ferrari, Hamilton versus Vettel to the finish. But who knows? Maybe Raikkonen or Bottas will surprise us this season. So,
one last thing on F1 is I feel like the racing not going to be that amazing. It's not really that hopeful. I feel like IndyCar is still going to be the class of 2018 on best racing wise, but F1, the way the pace looks with Ferrari up there and how Haas was doing, and McLaren, Renault being up there, and Red Bull still is good on downforce track. I feel like it's something you might just want to look at from a distance and just keep your eye on. Maybe something will happen there that'll really get interesting. So I feel like there's some hope for F1 besides the halo.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll keep you posted on that throughout the podcast, all through the entire 2018 season. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Quite a short episode compared to some of the other ones we've had. But if you'd like to see more of these in the future, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Google Play. Just search for the Rain Race Podcast. Or if you're listening on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel there, youtube.com/c/deductiverain. Here comes all the promotion here, all the shameless plugs. Kyle, if you'd like to go follow him on social media, pretty much RayAllPhonetic15 across all of it. So go check him out. In the near future, though, with the Phoenix IndyCar race upcoming, no guarantees on this, but I actually may want to try doing a little bit of a live stream. Maybe we'll get some live timing up on the screen, a couple onboard cameras, and we can come have a chat and hang out in the comments. Could be a fun idea, but stay tuned for that one if you want to see it. Of course, that'll be on the YouTube channel, so stick around if you want to see that. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.